Hello, Brian. How are you?
Okay, hi Frank. It's a while since we had a chance to talk, and an enormous amount has happened in the world in the last few weeks.
I should say.
I just looked at the news, and I see that the top people in the news are the Pope, the President of Iran, and the President of Russia.
Yes.
And they're all saying good things, all saying things that look promising, look as though they may lead to a better world in some way.
How quickly things change.
Well, let's hope it continues this way, but makes one wonder just exactly why this should all happen at this time of the year 2013, especially for people who start off with triskaidekaphobia.
Yes, oh yes, yes.
Don't like the word the number 13 anyway. But it is really quite amazing that that if we start with the Syria thing, Kerry, I think I got the impression he just made an offhand comment without thinking what he was saying, and the Russians jumped on it, and it solved everybody's problems because it means that Obama isn't going to be forced to do something he didn't want to do in the first place. The only thing is that possibly the Russians might be the main winners in the whole situation, but we can't really tell what's going to happen yet.
You have to give Lavrov a lot of credit.
Yeah.
He moved very quickly.
He's very clever, obviously.
Yes.
And then the president of Iran, before we meet next, I've been invited to meet the Iranian delegation of the UN next Wednesday.
Oh, so you might be up there if the meeting occurs.
In past situations like this, I've had a chance to chat with the president. I don't know whether I will this time. But at least I should find out something. And some of my old friends are in the delegation. So we may get a chance to see what things look like from their side, because obviously on the surface, there's been a big change in Iran. And one gets the impression that it's America trying to catch up with what's going on in other parts of the world, both in the Kerry case and in the Iran case. And whether anybody's going to try and catch up with the Pope or not, I don't know.
Let me just ask you this. Is it remotely possible that we could accompany you and have a few on-air words with the President of Iran, or would that be a no-no?
I don't think so, but I don't really know because I'm not organizing it. I've just been invited to turn up at a particular place at a particular time, and I don't know what's going on.
I couldn't pass that one up. That could have been a worldwide scoop.
But we'll see what we can do anyway. There's a fair number of people coming, including the foreign minister, of course, and other people, and they've expressed an interest in rebuilding their relationship with those of us who work on
that's fantastic.
This country.
That's fantastic. I find these transmission of letters between President Obama and Tehran to be interesting. It reminds me of those communications that happened between the White House and the Chinese through the Pakistanis back in 71 and 72.
71 and 72?
Yeah,
that's a long time ago.
Yes, well, that's when we were beginning to communicate with them. Actually, the letters were written on green paper in English, and they were transmitted through the government of Pakistan, back and forth. And for a while, Nixon and Kissinger were unsure whether they were originals or fakes, and they began to demand increasing proof, and then Zhou Enlai included something in one of the letters that tipped them off that they were real.
Yes, that's interesting. So the question, it seems to me, to be whether things really are changing in a new way or not. And it's interesting that, of course, apart from the three positive things that I just mentioned, Obama said he wouldn't meet with Putin in St. Petersburg, and Dilma Rousseff now has refused to meet with Obama in New York because of what the Washington administration is doing. So you could interpret these two things as additional factors showing that America is getting left behind in what's going on.
Well, you could, but I mean, to be blunt, I think if you look at I think the global reaction, and when I was in Monte Carlo last week, I was talking to a number of Europeans about this, and their view was that if force was going to have been used, it had to have been used almost immediately, like very quickly, and that each day that it dragged on, it just prolonged the likelihood that there was going to be some solution other than force. So I think as far as the general population is concerned, their public opinion in Europe and the United States certainly is who cares who gets the credit? I mean, if we don't have to intensify the anxiety in the Middle East by military action, that's fantastic.
Yes, but the situation in Syria, of course, is not getting any better for the people of Syria, and the situation in Egypt is not getting any better for the people of Egypt. And the proxy war between Iran and Saudi Arabia is not improving at all. So the question, of course, is who are the people who are likely to be able to make things happen in a globalizing world, and who are the people who are trying to hold on to the past and stopping things happen. Mm-hmm. That's a difficult question to answer, but I think that's, from the point of view of the study of globalization, I think that's what we have to think about. That is that the world is changing faster and faster anyway in terms of the general awareness of ordinary people and the way they're interacting with each other and what they're expecting and so on. People who are in leadership positions, some of them are brighter than others, but they're ordinary people. Mm-hmm. They're looking for opportunities and worrying about their heritage and things like that. So to a large extent, they're victims of what happens around them, and sometimes they're smart enough to take advantage of opportunities that look good at the time. But they can't really control what comes out. And just exactly what will come out of these new developments by the Pope and Putin and Obama and so on, it's difficult to predict at the moment.
Well, I think it's very difficult to predict because you have a number of regional actors who are exploiting the seams between the United States, Russia, and to some extent China. And Assad, for example, is a very wily fellow, and to be able to have done what he has done in the face of continuing UN evidence that have now pinpointed the origin of the chemical weapons, the two chemical weapons missiles, to his mountain redoubt, as I'm sure you saw in yesterday's New York Times. He is still in a position now where the United States is not going to act so long as there is a discussion on the table about peacefully removing the chemical weapons. So as far as the Pope goes, I find that absolutely fascinating and very, very positive. It's a very positive development.
Well, it takes an enormous amount of self-confidence to be able to say something like that, which changes the direction that the church has been moving in for, well, I don't know where you would put the beginning of it, but essentially since St. Paul.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's pretty long ago.
And it's going to be interesting to see how he elaborates on it, but I assume he's going to say that it's a question of where we put the emphasis. Mm-hmm. We have to put the emphasis. He's not going to say we're changing our minds. He's going to say that we should stop making this the most important thing. Mm-hmm. But we'll see.
Now, you had mentioned in our chat beforehand how this might or might not be well received by Islam. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, the thing is that I mean there was something in MEMRI, the MEMRI, which is a website that I think is rather Israeli oriented, but reports on the Middle East all the time. That I saw today. Somebody sent it to me to the effect that some senior cleric in Saudi Arabia had clarified for people in Saudi Arabia that when they died, they would each get 70 new virgins, and each new virgin would have 70 female servants. And it goes into a lot of details like this.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's still this effort in the least connected parts of the Muslim world to do everything they can to hold on to the past.
Okay.
And the most connected parts of the Muslim world still want their Muslim identity as distinct from a Christian or Western identity. Mm-hmm. But they're the people that we are calling the seculars. I mean, we talk about the seculars, the Shia and the Sunni, as though they're black and white categories, and they're not that at all. But what really is causing, I mean, there's more conflict within the Muslim world than there is between the Muslim world and the non-Muslim world.
Yes.
And the conflict within the Muslim world, I think, is entirely the conflict between people who are afraid of losing what they want to hold on to from the past because it's the values that they know, and the people who've learned enough about the rest of the world to be interested in the way the world as a whole is changing, to want to be a part of it, even though they don't necessarily want to be Westerners.
And that's unfolding in a microcosm right now in Syria.
Yeah.
Between the Iranian-sponsored Shia and the Saudi-sponsored Sunni.
But even in Iran, and you wander about the streets of Iran, and you can see this sort of thing on YouTube all the time, and the women are all forced to wear these uniforms by the clerics, but they paint their toenails and they wear floral borders on their
garments.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's an enormous amount of fashion and modern art going on in Europe, and of course rock music in the basements and so on.
Yes.
And a great deal of sexual interaction among young people as well.
Well, I'm going to be very interested in hearing your thoughts on the meeting with the leadership next week. That's going to be fascinating.
Well, potentially it's going to be fascinating.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Because we've been sending students back and forth there, or were sending students back and forth there under Khatami from 1998 to 1995.
Okay.
And under Ahmadinejad, we got no visas, and we haven't sent any students then, and we had to close our office there. Mm-hmm. And we're wondering whether we'll now be able to open our office again and send students again.
If it loosens up, will you go back?
Oh, I would go back. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But the most important thing is, I think, to increase the amount of direct interaction. I mean, you saw that Facebook opened up for 5 hours yesterday.
Yes.
And most people think that it was probably an error. Somebody made a mistake and it opened up and then they closed it down again. However, if you also notice, the president and the foreign minister are tweeting all the time, and they're on Facebook. And in fact, all the people I know who go to Iran use various types of filters to get through the firewall and actually interact on Facebook. So one wonders why they bother, and whether they mean to just make the point that it's not supposed to be done, but nevertheless let people do it, which may be what the Pope's doing in the church as well.
Just as a closing, do you think that there's any sort of recognition or ripple effect as to what the Pope is saying with the clerical leaders in Tehran? Is it? I mean, would they take? Obviously, they would take note of that. Is it a signal to them as well, perhaps?
Well, I don't know whether. I think the Catholic Church has been more concerned with what's going on in the Levant and Egypt than in Iran.
Oh, I didn't mean the concern coming in that direction from the Catholic Church to Iran, but more of a recognition that, oh boy, here's a very old conservative institution that's seemingly doing a 180.
Yeah.
How is this something we should think about? I mean, does it have any effect at all on them? Is it?
Oh, I don't think so. No.
Okay.
The thing is, you see, the great thing about the Catholic Church is that it's the interpreter of the Bible, and you can use the Bible to preach anything you want to preach. You can find any text in it to suit what you want to preach.
Yes.
But if you're using the Quran as the text, you can't do that. Or it's much more difficult.
Okay.
The idea of the church as the interpreter of the Bible has been central to Christianity, to majority Christianity from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the Muslim world, the Quran is supposed to be something everybody can read, and if you can't understand it, then you ask somebody to help you to understand it. But there's no central authority that can do what it likes with it.
Plus, there's much less of an intermediary status between man and Allah. That's very interesting.
So I think that it's much more difficult for Islam to change, and more difficult for somebody to do in the Islamic world, whether Shia or Sunni, to do something similar to what the Pope appears to have done today.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens. What day do you go to New York?
Next Wednesday.
Okay. Oh, so maybe next Thursday if we can schedule. I can't wait. We'll have to send out an advanced bulletin.
Okay.
All right, Professor Spooner, thank you very much.
Right. Cheers.
All right, bye.